Welcome back to the channel, everyone. We're here at Shearsby Valley, my #1 filming spot. Beautiful day here. We're in June now, the fishing's good, everything's warming up. Hopefully a bit of spawning's out of the way. We're going to do some fishing. A few things I want to show you today, but the first one is a tactic that I've been catching quite a lot of fish on recently. It's been working really well here, and it's all about fishing hard pellets, but on a short pole. It works really well at this time of year. The fish don't want to be in that full depth, but they might not, maybe early and late in the match, they might not actually want to feed shallow. They might just want to be out of the full depth on that inside slope. So we're going to talk you through how we're going to do it. Very, very simple. As you can see, I've got not even a pint of fishery 4 mils. They're actually like an orangey colour, so that Dan can obviously keep an eye on people, the naughty ones that aren't using fishery pellets. They're there, just nice, standard stuff really. They're actually quite a big 4 mil. They're closer to a 6 to be fair. When it comes to pellet choice, you've got to think about what you're trying to target. In here, I know I'm going to be catching F1s, odd carp, so these big 4 mils are absolutely perfect. If I was looking to catch just carp, I'd go for 6 mils every time. I'd even consider 8 mils on venues where the fish are really big. So that's the bait, as simple as that. There's no oil on them, there's no flavours on them, there's no nothing. We'll show you how we're going to feed them in a minute. The rig's a little bit interesting. I've got black zip. It's going to handle the F1s nicely. It's also going to handle the bonus carp that I'm hopefully going to catch at some point today. Now, one thing I've got to say is we're fishing on a slope today. Now, I've done a video on the Nufish channel showing you exactly how I go about plumbing up, so I'll put a link up there for that one. But what's really important is the feeding and the accuracy. So the #1 thing I can get across today is have your pole pot right on your pole tip. When you're dealing with slopes and stuff, you want to be bang on your mark. So having that as close as you can without getting into silly amounts of tangles is important. Like I say, we've got the black zip. And then we've got a 4x14 Cypri. The rig is exactly 42 inches deep. I've got my little mark there just above that actually. It's like a centimetre above that. I've just marked that on my pole. I've got 8 inches of line between the pole float and the elastic. Now, importantly, the Cypri's got a 1.7 mil bristle, which actually registers the pellet. By that I mean, because I'm fishing on a slope, if I was to flick my rig out too far, the weight of the pellet would actually sink the float slightly. So I know that I'm presented well. When the float's sat as I want it with probably 8 or 9 mil showing, I know that I'm actually on the bottom. Whereas if it was dotted right down to an absolute pimple, I'd know that I'm slightly off bottom and I need to come in up the slope a little bit. So that's why I use the Cypri rather than the Fury for this size of pellet. So if we're using 8 mils, I'd use the Fury, nice big thick tip. That's on 018 mainline. I don't go any less than that in the summer, there's no point. And then, because I'm fishing on a slope, a bulk and 2 just doesn't seem quite right to me. So I've got just a staggered bulk. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 #8s and then 2 #9s. Simple stuff. The first one's 18 inches from the hook and it comes down to my 6-inch hook length. And then I've just got an 014 hook length with a 16 B911 hook. Simple stuff, but it's about the plumbing up and it's about the feeding. So let's quickly whiz a plummet on and show you. Now I use a 45 gram plummet. When I know I'm on a hard bottom, I think you just get a better reading with a 45 gram one. Personal preference, but it's just how I like to do things. So I'm just going to whiz out and show you where I've plumbed up. Now, like I say, it's 42 inches deep here, so I found my spot there against my far bank marker. Perfect there. You see the whole body and a little bit is out of the water. I like that, me. If I go over here to the left, it's getting deeper, and then if I come over to the right, it's getting considerably shallower, which is perfect for me because I can always flick the float out to the left, the hook bait out to the left, and I know that it's going to drop in against the slope exactly where I want it. That's very important. It's one of the reasons why I've got that strung out shot, because it allows me to sort of present it nicely on that slope. So nice and accurate. I'm going to fish there, just there, right up against that marker, and everything I'm going to feed is going to be through the pot. Now, the temptation is with hard pellets to throw bait in, and it's very effective. Fish love the noise. Fish love to come to the noise, but you know what happens? It happens time and time and time again. You throw your pellets in, you get an indication, you miss it. You get a little liner and you strike and you miss it and you ruin your trap. This approach that I'm going to show you today is all about patience. It's all about keeping the fish on the bottom, feeding just through the pot so everything's nice and tight, and we're being patient. If it takes us 5 minutes to get a bite, so be it. The fish are going to be where I need them to be. If I start throwing pellets in here, I'm going to have fish at all different levels. They're going to be an absolute nightmare. We don't want that. We want to keep everything nice and pinned on the bottom. So I've loaded my pot up with sort of 10 pellets, and I've just dunked it under the water. Sorry. I know that them pellets are not going to get caught up in the surface tension, and we're going to put these pellets in. So nice and quiet, right next to the surface. Just pop them in, nice and accurate. And bang in the middle of that firing marker, and I'm going to flick my rig out to the left and let it come in. Now I'm just holding the float out of the water, and I can see it coming in like that. It's right under my pole float about now, and I can lower it down. I know that I'm presented well there. In that situation, perfect. So I'm presented well. I've snuck my bait in, I've made no noise. I'm just setting a trap, and I'm just going to wait. Now, oh, see, didn't take long at all. Now the temptation is now for me to go throw some bait in, get ready for the next fish, but that's not what this approach is all about. This approach is for those days where things aren't amazing. You know, if things are going to be amazing, we're going to catch them in the edge, we're going to catch them shallow. But a lot of times post spawning, it can be funny. So we're just trying to plod. This is a plodding method, this is. We're just trying to take everything that comes, every fish that comes along. Because we've got hard pellets on, is going to be a little dumpy. Like that's a nice F1. Like that's a nice F1. Right in the top lip. Perfect. But it just shows you that with a bit of thought and a bit of care and attention, we fed it nice and steady. We fed it close to the surface, so we're not making any noise. And we're just going to repeat the process. And that's what this hard pellet fishing is all about. It's a way to keep you in touch with the match without blowing your peg apart. I could easily pot in a load of pellets here or ground bait or something like that, trying to push my peg to win. But at this time of year, that can often be fatal. It can lead to all sorts of problems. So we're just taking things nice and steady. So I flick my rig out again, nice and close to the surface, drop my pellets in, nice and accurate, lift my float up. Now this is one thing I will say, it's all about finding a depth that suits the venue. So I plumbed up, and I know because of the markers on my pole that's 42 inches deep. If it was much deeper than that, I'd come closer in. Look at that, look. Straight away. Really clean bite. It's just gone wallop under. Because we're fishing on a hard bottom, there's no silt involved. Because we're feeding everything like that, nice and quiet, the fish aren't coming off the bottom. It's keeping the fish down. I can just plod. It's one of those approaches, this is, where you don't feel like you're doing anything. You're not firing bait all over the place. You're not throwing ground bait in. Do you know what I mean? You're just plodding along, and then you're lifting it out at the end, and you're like, blooming heck, I had 70 pounds in that hard pellet net. And then you add that to your edge fish later in the day, and you're on for a winner. And it's just a great way of just plodding along. Matches are getting won here on this method because it's giving the anglers sort of 60, 70 pound in that early part of the match before the carp. There's no carp really feeding at the minute. You know, it's the F1s that are feeding, and we're just trying to catch them in a way that I'm always going to get a bite doing this. I'm not busting my peg apart by being silly and feeding bait everywhere. I'm just taking it nice and steady. This one's really fighting for an F1. Lovely fish though. And you can see they're like, I mean that's probably not far off £2, like a lovely fish. I'll catch one more and just show you that process again. Lovely fish that. Proper F1. They're really grown in this lake. I don't know if you remember, I did a micro paste one on this lake about 3 years ago, and they were all about that big. And that's the stamp now. They've come on ever so well in this lake. But yeah, so I'm just using a fishery formula in the band. That is the rules here. You're not allowed to put like a robin red on or anything like that. So I just put in nice and steady. I'm not being frugal. I'm not. If I was throwing bait in, I'd be throwing like 2 pellets in, but because I'm potting them in nice and quiet, setting a trap, I don't want to be too negative. I want to pot in a decent amount that's going to get down to the bottom and get me a bite. So I'll just rattle them in. Lift the float. You can see the rig coming in. As soon as I feel like the float's nice and straight, I just lower her in, and that pellet's presented, and I can just wait for another bite. It's a fantastic way to fish, this is. And like, I think I got interrupted on before that last fish, but if it was any deeper than this, I would come in closer. So don't be frightened to use a top kitten 1. on the flip side, if it's too shallow, go out to top kit and free. But it's all about finding that inside slope, potting those pellets in nice and accurate, and catching the fish, and just taking what your peg gives you rather than forcing it. So important. So look, I'm just sitting, getting a little indication there. I'm just looking for that wallop under, really. I'm not looking for any sort of little dibs and dabs. But because I'm not throwing bait in, they're not going mental. You're going to foul like an odd one, of course you are, but you're keeping everything... Oh, missed bite. You're keeping everything as calm as you can. You know, look at that one there, it's just bow waved off my bait. Yeah, you're keeping things as calm as you possibly can, which is so important. See that then? That's exactly what I was talking about with that bristle. I flicked my float slightly out of position and it actually sunk. So I'm not happy with that, so I'm just going to start that again. So I'm just letting it come in, resting up against that slope. Just about there, and then lowering. There, that's better. There's a great angler who fishes here called John Shellard, and he's been doing ever so well of late. And this is what he does, he just sits and sits and sits and just takes what the peg gives him, never gets carried away, gets a couple of sections of pole out of his bag. And it works ever so well. It works on every commercial, this does. I know that if I threw pellets in now, I'd get an indication straight away, and I'd just miss it. So what's the point? You're just ruining what you're trying to achieve. What's going on there? I'll tell you what that was. A little cruising, I reckon. I've got to assume that that's had me. Got to assume that that's had me pellets. So I'm gonna quickly refeed. So I'll tell you what that was on there. A little cruising, which isn't what we need. But again, you are going to catch fish like that, and just take them. Fishing commercials are big now. Like them F1s we've already caught, over £1 each. Just take them. Don't be thinking, oh, I need to catch carp. Just whatever the peg gives you, just take it. And you'd be amazed, like at the end of the session, what you've weighed in. Always use a 4x14, or even a 4x16, something you can control. So when you lower it in, you've got feel when you're lowering it in. Very important, that is. If you were to use like a 4x10 or something like that here, it probably wouldn't be quite as good. Look at that, there's loads of fish there. Not put any micros in or anything, we're just feeding and fishing on the hook, exactly what we're, just the fishery pellets. The fish know what they are. There we go, another fish. Clean as you like. And that's it, that's as simple as this method is. Anyone can do that. You know, you could come along here, even if you're only on a margin pole, get your top kit out, 1 section, 2 sections, get yourself a nice little pole pot, feed dead accurate, and be patient. Like then, it took me a little bit of time to get that bite, but that's a nice F1, and it's just a great way to catch fish. Look at that, perfect. Very, very simple, very effective, great fishing. Half a pint of 4 mils. What more could you ask for? Don't forget to like and subscribe, everyone, and we'll see you again on the next video.